Hi, welcome to the AMS webinar about the MRCs, the Math Research Communities. We are so glad that you're here. My name is Sarah Bryant. I'm the AMS Director of Programs, and it's my great pleasure to give you an overview of the MRCs. I hope that you're here to learn more and hopefully to apply. So I just want to tell a little bit about what's in store for you today, and if you join us at the MRCs, which you have to look forward to. I have a brief slideshow. The goal today is to make sure that the organizers of the 2024 MRCs, there are 4 groups running this summer, have an opportunity to share with you what they are planning for the summer and to let you know if it be right for you. So we are here for an informational webinar. We will be on till 3. There will be, each of the organizers will have about 10 minutes or so in particular. There's more information to be found online. It's important to note that every offering by the AMS, we also support a Math Safe program to ensure that folks feel welcome and safe during all of our meetings and gatherings, including informational webinars like these. If you feel that you need Math Safe assistance, there's more information on our web and a phone number that you can reach. And we strive in all of our meetings to ensure that we create a welcoming environment. We do have a welcoming environment policy, and on that policy is a mechanism for reporting violations. And because we hope to be able to share this webinar with others who were not able to join us live during the call, we would appreciate adhering to the code of conduct, which is we do not expect disruptions in any way that would bar the full participation of any of our attendees and allow us to share this information further. Okay, so quickly to the agenda. I'm going to give a little bit of general information about the MRCs. My great pleasure to talk about this wonderful program. And then you're going to hear from the 4 topics that are offered for 2024. Each of those 4 topics will give an overview. They might be able to answer a few questions right then during their slotted time. And then we will end with more time for Q&A for all of the participating organizers who are here. You can ask targeted or general questions. The MRC program. So what is the MRC program? This is one of the AMS hallmark programs that is targeted to early career mathematicians. We are offering this program because we understand the importance of collaborative research. So the goal is to develop collaborative research skills, to build a research network. A lot of students who are working on projects with their advisor might only work with their advisor, or folks who are in post-PhD positions, whether they're postdocs or beginning teaching careers, might not have a broad research network. The MRC helps you launch and sustain that. You're also in real time during the summer and for the year following receiving mentoring from others, peer mentoring from others in your group, and mentoring from the organizing teams as well. The summer conferences, even though we're talking about 4 conferences, each of them is 1 week long. All participants arrive on a Sunday and then leave on a Saturday. So the entire working week is dedicated to working on math. It's very intense, very collaborative and hands-on. There will be some reading preparation in the months leading up to this intense week. And all of this takes place in a beautiful location for 2024, designated as the Beaver Hollow Conference Center near Buffalo, New York. There are many outdoor activities to enjoy while you're there. Of course, a lot of math happening as well. The MRCs is not just a summer program. This is really a year-long program. We not only have the summer sessions before, we will have at the following JMM 4 special sessions dedicated to those topics. That's a commitment the AMS has. And participants in those MRCs will be the special session organizers for those special sessions. And we have contingent on further support from the NSF, support for participants in the MRC 2024 to participate in JMM following their experience. We, of course, also build in many opportunities for community building. Of course, the experience speaks for itself. When we gather information from our participants who all engage in a 5-year longitudinal survey, what we hear time and time again, we want you to appreciate, is that this is really about active and productive collaboration, where you're going to see real results, not necessarily just in that week, but over the sustained involvement with your research group, and that you're working in a structured, organized way, but one in which people feel really invited in to participate. Lots of different backgrounds participate in any given MRC. The organizers will talk more about what they're hoping for among people who apply for theirs. A lot of folks talk about how MRCs jump-started new fields of inquiry for them or helped them explore career options that they hadn't previously been thinking about. It's important to know how to apply. So the application is on math programs. It's open now, and it closes mid-February, so note that deadline. This is targeted to a particular career age. So this is about 2 years pre-PhD. We do ask in the application, for example, for a title of your dissertation, meaning that maybe it's a working title, it's a target title, but that you are close to the end of your PhD track, up to 5 years post-PhD. You should really only apply to one MRC. They're all amazing, but you can only participate in at most one. And it's really not common for people to repeat MRCs. So if you've participated in MRC before, you'd have to make a very compelling case for inclusion in a future MRCs, trying to ensure that lots of mathematicians have access to this opportunity. Little more about the application. You'll just be asked for some basic information at the top, and then you have an essay portion. So just a couple of paragraphs. The organizers are looking for ways in which you describe how you can contribute to the MRC and how you'll benefit from it. So that's really the essence of that paragraph. You're also asked to provide a reference letter. So again, all of this is through math programs, and the information listed, basic collection of information through math programs, and then an essay. You have 500 word max for your couple of paragraphs here describing how you're prepared to engage and what you hope to get out of the MRC experience. It's important that we note this is NSF funded, and so we acknowledge the NSF. There's also funding from the AMS directly and from private donors who contribute to the NSF on behalf of our mission of supporting early career faculty and early career mathematicians. Today, we are very pleased to welcome panelists who will be speaking about the 4 MRCs scheduled for 2024. So we have some panelists speaking about algebraic combinatorics, about mathematics of adversarial, interpretable, and explainable AI, about climate science at the interface between topological data analysis and dynamical systems theory, and about homotopical combinatorics. So you can see a lot of range here on the topics, and we're really excited to bring them on board. I'm going to hand this off to the organizer group that will speak first. They may have some slides to share and talk about their experience. I'll stop my slide share and hand it off. Okay, wonderful. Nice to see you all. So Catherine, Rosa, and Susanna, I'm going to step backstage and allow you to take the floor.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So let's see. I'll start and I'll introduce myself. I'm Susanna Fishel. I'm at Arizona State University, and our MRC is made up of 5 groups. I'll be leading a group with Anna Poon of Baruch College. And first I'll tell you about what the 2 of us will be talking about. So participants in our groups will work on maximal chains on posets that are related to both permutations and parenthesizations. So I hope this works. I sort of have a small visual aid. This is a polytope called the associahedron that's related to the parenthesizations. And if you hold it the right way and just think of the edges as edges in a poset, and then these are the vertices, what we'll be studying are the ways to go from where my thumb is to where this middle finger is. So going up there. And what's nice is it won't just be these polytopes and posets. We'll record informations about the chains in these posets using something called quasi-symmetric functions. And so there'll be some relationship to representation theory, and there'll be lots of combinatorics. So I'd also like to tell you about another group, and that will be led by Rebecca Garcia of Colorado College and Emily Barnard of DePaul University. And they'll be working on a related project. So participants in their groups will investigate lattice properties of the poset of maximal tubings for the cycle graph. And this poset is closely related to the associahedron, that's this thing here, and the Tamari lattice and the weak order on permutations. So participants will jump into hands-on computations from day one, and will use SAGE. So that's for people who want some coding experience and or not. And then there are tons of open questions, lots of open questions, and either whether you like to think about the big picture structure or about enumeration. So that's what those two will be that group will be working on.
Okay, I'll continue with describing two other groups. So our third group consisting of the senior person, Pamela Harris, and together with the junior Sarah Brown. The fourth team is led by me, Catherine Yan, and I'm working with Oya Mandelsham from University of Waterloo. So both of our teams are majorly working on enumerative and algebraic combinatorics, and the major subject is on parking function. So first I'll describe the project Harris and Sarah proposed. They have relation with the representation theory of the algebra. So Pam and Sarah's project is on friendship parking functions. So parking function and which imposed on where cars can park based on some graphs whose the vertices of graph are cars and the edges determined by the friendship between the cars. So the classical parking function, that's kind of a common subject, corresponding to a friendship parking function on a complete graph on n vertices. So that group planned to explore friendship parking function for some special underlying graphs. They will also explore how the symmetric group action on the labeling of the vertices of graph would change the number of parking functions, as well as connections to representation theory of the symmetric group and the Markov chains. So for my group, I'm working with Oya. We are concentrated on combinatorial statistics and operator method. So the major object, the questions in my mind has two parts. One is on statistics on multidimensional parking functions. Recently, there are vector form multidimensional parking functions, which have a certain overlap with the classical G parking function, but not really the same. This is actually a very new subject. Some definition and the computational result are known, but very few combinatorial representations has been investigated. We'll concentrate on that part. And another subject in my team is on polytopes formed by taking convex hull of some special parking functions. This is really a kind of interesting subject and have some initial literature circulated in the archive. What we are concentrated will be on the special subfamilies consisting of prime parking functions or increasing prime parking functions. So this is the two groups of work. Rosa, I think is next.
Okay. I hope you can see this slide. Maybe the first one, right? So my project will have to do with graph coloring, but we will be coloring with variables. And to graph, you will be able to associate a monomial, like basically how many times that variable occurred. And there is a concept of proper coloring that I'm not going to define. So just think you're going to be able to label the vertices of a graph, right, with a monomial. And then Stanley in the 1990s defined this function, right, and it's a polynomial, right, of degree, the number of vertices in your graph, and you sum over all possible colorings that are, you will receive, if you're selected, you will receive the background information before. So here is an example, right? So these are, if you have 3 colors, these are the ways to color it. And the function turns out to be this polynomial. It has some very nice properties, that it is symmetric, which means that if you permute the variables, you get the same polynomial. If you apply any permutation of the indices here of the variables, it should give you the same. So this is a generalization of something called the chromatic polynomial in graph theory. So if you're familiar with this function generalizes that in some natural way. Stanley made a number of conjectures, and one of the conjectures, a very big open conjecture, is that it distinguishes trees, that if you give me 2 trees, I will obtain 2 different polynomials for the different trees. Here, don't worry if you don't understand. There are these, the symmetric functions form vector space, and there are these bases. And here I read the classically, if you go to MathSage, for example, and you want to compute this function, all of this is programmed, it will spit it out in terms of power symmetric functions. So here are 2 examples of what the computer will give you, right? And you will, I have done most of the work that I've done on this. I've done with undergraduates that don't know much. So don't worry about if you don't know the background, right? So the idea here is that you get 2 different polynomials, right? That these 2 are different in the basis of power symmetric functions. And it's a driving conjecture. So the point of this is not to prove this conjecture, but to study this in different sets. So for instance, something that I've been doing is trying to find recurrences of how to compute it, right? And this is one, and Scott here was an undergraduate, and we obtained this conjecture, so probably you will have to read some of these. And lately, like last year, I had a different conjecture by looking at the in a different basis. So we are going to be exploring, and this we are going to be doing with Anna Weingart, who is at Minnesota, University of Minnesota right now. So this is just to give you a sample. There will be some concrete questions that will be asked, and we will explore the chromatic symmetric functions in different variables, trying to prove, kind of certain things related to the coefficients. So that's all I have to share. And if you have questions, feel free to email.
Thing for me.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. That was a great overview of the MRC. There will be several working groups, but we can hear the themes and the common vision that you have. I'll remind participants of the webinar that if you have questions, when people are presenting their MRC and you're thinking of questions you might have, you can drop them in the Q&A. And while our panelists will be stepping off stage when other groups present, they will be available at the end to answer some more questions or answer them during the webinar as possible. All right, so I'll let the Homotopical Combinatorics folks take the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angélica Osorno, and I'm one of the organizers of the Homotopical Combinatorics MRC. So, Kyle, you can go to the next slide. So the organizers, there's 5 of us: Andrew Blumberg from Columbia, Mike Hill from UCLA and University of Minnesota, Kyle Ormsby, who's joining us here from Reed College, Angélica Osorno from Reed College, and Costanza Ronsheim from Kent. All of us have been magically finding this work in homotopical combinatorics, and we find it very exciting. So we're very thrilled that we're organizing this and sharing this research with all of you.
So we wanted to tell you a little bit about the basic objects that we'll be studying, because they might be less familiar than some structures in other programs. The primary object of study is called a transfer system. These are related to G-equivariant stable homotopy theory, but they have a completely combinatorial description. So you can take a poset with a partial order less than or equal to, and then a transfer system on that poset is a new partial order on the underlying set, call it arrow, such that first off, x arrow y implies that x is less than or equal to y in the original poset. And then additionally, there's a restriction or pullback axiom. So there's a little Hasse diagram there that depicts with dashed lines less than or equal to, and with solid lines, the transfer system relation. And the double arrow is a logical implication. So you get a relation between x meets z and z when you have a relation between x and y, and z is less than or equal to y. Connecting this with equivariant homotopy theory is the subgroup lattice. So for a finite group G, a G transfer system is a transfer system on that subgroup lattice that's closed under conjugation. These G transfer systems ultimately encode the homotopy theory of n-infinity operads. These are an equivariant elaboration on the notion of E-infinity structures. You don't necessarily need to know operad theory or E-infinity stuff, or even homotopy theory to work on this, though, since we can turn it into combinatorial problems. And really cool combinatorics shows up. So one tantalizing aspect of that is that the number of transfer systems on a finite chain with n+1 elements is the n plus first Catalan number. And in fact, it's not just counted by the Catalan numbers, but the transfer systems themselves form a lattice, and you recover the Tamari lattice, which is the one skeleton of the icosahedron, which you saw in the algebraic combinatorics presentation.
So we actually wrote an article, a survey on this topic for the notices of the AMS, precisely with the idea of advertising this MRC. So if you go to the notices website, you'll be able to find it, or if you're really quick, you can take a look at that link in the bottom. But one of the things that we really tried to do with this article is to survey the kind of like the origin, but also the specific problems in combinatorics that we've encountered as working on this. And Kyle says no prerequisites, and we really mean it. For example, Kyle and I have worked with undergraduate students on this subject. So some of those papers with undergraduate students are referenced in this paper, and we really, if you're at all curious about this, we really invite you to read this article. It will give you a sense of the kinds of questions that we might be working on during the MRC. We haven't we haven't decided the teams yet, but we have a lot of open questions, and we survey some of them in this article. And you can also, if you look at the references, you'll see the kind of work we've already done, some with undergraduates, some with colleagues who don't know anything about homotopy theory.
In conclusion, please apply. We welcome applications from all early career researchers, which we'll define pretty broadly as grad students through pre-tenure faculty. The topic is certainly enriched by prior exposure to combinatorics, homotopy theory, or group/representation theory. This is something, if you're looking for a new research direction, we think there's a lot to pick up and run with. The deadline for all the programs is February 15th via mathprograms.org.
And we're happy to take questions now. Oh, the question on the Q&A, I think, is better answered by the Sarah from the AMS.
Yeah, so we had one question, which I'm going to have to look at precedent for. So can an MRC organizer also be a reference writer, or is that a conflict of interest? So I'm going to have to look at the protocol around that. I don't think that has, I don't have an answer to that off the top of my head right now. Yeah, but we'll clarify that, because we do understand that some of the folks here who are sharing their research agendas for the MRCs do have graduate students, and it is common to see their graduate students or their collaborators, graduate students in the MRC. So we'll get clarity on that. Are there other questions related to homotopical combinatorics? There is. There's one in the Q&A. So,
All right, so, oh, Sarah, do you want me to try to?
Yeah, why don't you do the next one related to the topic?
Sure, yeah, so Andrew asked if homotopical combinatorics might have applications to TDA, topological data analysis. I'm not sure. I think here we're really exposing some combinatorial structure that underpins these big questions in equivariant stable homotopy theory. But I'd always love to be surprised by connections with such things.
There is a question about how many participants are accepted to an MRC. So for the MRCs in 2024, we expect to accept 40 participants per MRC. So it's a large research cohort. And that's why in some of them you've heard about threads of topics, because the larger groups are very often then form smaller groups within that MRC.
And Daniel had a couple questions, but one of them is whether there's applications to unstable homotopy theory. One really tantalizing thing is that transfer systems are actually the same thing as a weak factorization system on a POSET, considered as a category. And that's one of the building blocks of a model structure, which is something you do, abstract homotopy theory with. So this is definitely an interesting direction and something that we've pursued, but again, definitely some of the problems that will be raised at the MRC, we'll look at that. And yeah, so in some sense, homotopy theory of all flavors ends up being part of the subject.
Yeah, and maybe to add a little bit to that, in the when we're dealing with n-infinity operands, that's equivariant homotopy theory, both stable and unstable. So there's that too.
There are a couple of other questions related more generally, not to this topic. So I'm going to hold them in reserve, answer them live during the general Q&A. That way we can allow our next group to take the stage. And please do continue to post your questions in the Q&A. We do have time for all the groups to come out and field them as possible later. All right, we will see more soon. Great, we're ready to hear more about AI from Emily.
I've split my screen, so hold on now. It's like very hard for me to see what I'm doing. So let me, no. Okay. Well, I can't go full screen right now. So I'll just, nope, that's not what I want. I apologize. There we go. Okay. Everyone can see it, hopefully. Hi, my name is Emily King, and I am co-organizing an MRC with Tegan Emerson, Dustin Mixon, Tom Needon, and Kara Jima. And the topic of our MRC is explainable, interpretable, and adversarial AI. And these are kind of some big buzzwords these days in data science, but they're really exciting because I think we as mathematicians have a lot of opportunities to use our skill sets to better understand these topics. So yeah, they're definitely very buzzwordy, also unsupervised learning, but that's also because a lot of people right now are really, really interested in them. So first of all, what is a neural network? I find that a lot of times mathematicians are not actually aware of what a neural network is because they've heard it explained by people who aren't mathematicians. But it's really super simple, and that it's you have a layer of a neural network is just the composition, a functional composition of an affine linear map and a nonlinear component-wise function. And a feed-forward neural network is just the composition of these layers. And there's some little details that come up here and there, but this is basically what a neural network is. So you can already maybe see that we should be able to use mathematical techniques to better understand neural networks. And so some of the ways we can try to understand neural networks or machine learning in general are through these concepts of explainable and interpretable AI. So explainable AI is the idea of trying to figure out the internal logic and mechanisms at play in a black box machine learning system like a neural network. So what kind of mathematical tools can we learn to use to understand that? And interpretable AI is where we actually can use certain types of mathematics from the get-go to design a system that's not a neural network in general, where we can actually interpret why these decisions are being made. So this can be really important in areas like self-driving cars or medicine or atmospheric environmental science, where you really want to know why the output is coming. And there's different ways you can analyze neural networks mathematically. So we can analyze properties of real data sets as they travel through the network and just be inspired by theoretical math. We can analyze each layer itself as a function, or we can analyze the entire network or all the possible networks. And so we can do things that we're proving things about all the realm of possibility of neural networks and using ideas from approximation theory or other areas of math. And another kind of one of those buzzwords that's not in the title of the MRC, but is also important, is that of unsupervised or semi-supervised learning. So the idea is, can we learn something about data without a large set of labeled data? So for example, I personally collaborate a lot with people in atmospheric and environmental science, where they have tons of data. I mean, there's satellites circling overhead all the time, but it's not really labeled. So by that, I mean, they're looking for certain types of phenomenon happening in the atmosphere, and they don't know where to look, and it's very hard to train like a neural network. So it ends up that there are techniques using things like harmonic analysis and topology that can be used where you don't have a lot of labeled training data, or you have no labeled training data, which when you're training a neural network in general, you need a lot of labels. And the last word, the big word that's in the title, is adversarial AI. So this is something that is actually a little scary, in that there are ways to sort of trick neural networks by do slight perturbations of your input. And so I'm going to show a picture that if you've seen it before, you've seen it 1,000 times before, and if you haven't, you're going to be very shocked. So this is from one of the first adversarial AI papers. And so what we have is we have a picture of a panda that a state-of-the-art at the time neural network said, I'm 58% sure this is a panda. And we want to introduce some chaos. And so as we know from multivariable calculus, the best way to move very quickly is to move in the direction of the gradient. So we're going to take a teeny tiny step, the gradient of the neural network, and add that. This is the picture that we get. To me, it still looks like a panda, but now the neural network is very, very, very certain, over 99% certain that it is a given. And this understanding these types of tasks mathematically is, and I removed a slide, but this is really important, again, when you're talking about things like self-driving cars. If you could put a sticker on a stop sign that tells the car it's a green light and not a stop sign, then that can be very dangerous. So these are all topics that have really real world implications. And fortunately, we as mathematicians have a lot of tools we can use to better understand these topics: linear algebra, high dimensional geometry, topology, subspace geometry, group actions, harmonic analysis, and more. And so one of the things that we're really focusing on with this MRC is that we really want to prepare you for like a great future. So we have one of the organizers taken Emerson is at a national lab. Some of us are at state universities. There's one at a liberal arts college. We're also going to be teaming up with the Erdos Institute to have a little session on working in industry and mathematics. So hopefully, no matter what direction you want to go in your career, that you have some guidance on that. And there'll be a lot of soft skills as well. So you'll be getting feedback on being able to give talks. As far as the topics go, this is a very quickly changing field. So what we are going to be doing is about a month or so before the start of the MRC, maybe a little bit longer, we are going to be sending out some short little videos presenting 10 possible projects. And then based on the feedback and people's interests, we're going to narrow that down to 5 projects. And you'll have some reading that you'll have to do, and everyone's going to present one paper. So you'll hopefully come in with a pretty strong background. And not only that, but like you'll have a lot of choice in what the actual projects that we will be working on. And we'll have a Slack channel throughout the entire time, and that hopefully will also encourage like work to continue afterwards. And some of the people in the MRC will then be invited to give a talk in the Codex seminar that one of the other co-organizers, Dustin Mixon, and I run. That is an international remote seminar on some of the topics that we'll be covering. And I realized I was speaking very quickly. Hopefully everyone understood what was being said.
We do have time for a couple of quick questions related to this MRC, if there are some. Again, we're collecting some that are more general and hope to answer them at the end.
I will also add that the projects that we'll be presenting will have a mixture of, shall we say, applicability. So there'll be some that you need to come in with coding experience. You're going to be doing a lot of coding, and some that will be like pretty much purely theoretical, and you'll be proving. So there'll be a lot of flexibility in background for programming and different types of theoretical math.
I see a neural networks question in the Q&A. This is something we can tackle now.
None of the co-organizers really work on markup processes, so that's definitely not going to be one of the approaches. Tegan Emerson is a topological data scientist, and so this is something that will come up. So as far as the neural networks themselves being topological spaces, one of the topics that we had originally proposed, which may make it to the final 10, actually does deal with the sort of set theoretic topological properties of neural networks as a space. So if you fix the number of layers, fix the dimension of each layer, what can you say about these spaces? They're very highly non-convex, but can you say other things about them? And so how much is the adversarial behavior connected to the hyperparameters of a neural network? So I think there's a lot to do with adversarialness that just is almost independent of the hyperparameters, because there's this model called the manifold hypothesis that says that a lot of data classes are sort of naturally living near some relatively low dimensional manifold. And by low dimensional, I mean relative to the dimension of the actual like image or whatever type of data it is. And so essentially when you have a neural network, especially one that's like classifying, it's sort of learning a function, a very complicated function that should be approximately right on this union of low dimensional manifolds. But that leaves a lot of space on the full dimensionality of what you can have as the input domain to wiggle around with. So there's been a lot of work trying to figure that out. And there has been some work where people try to leverage this, try to protect against adversarial attacks in the trading process that would affect the hyperparameters. But then someone comes up with a new way of attacking a network. So there is definitely some connection, but I think there's some of it is that you just can't avoid it. So it's better maybe to figure out how one can detect if something has been adversarial attacked.
Right. Thank you so much for this overview, Emily. I think we better step back to the backstage and allow the last group to come on. If other questions come in through the Q&A, Emily can answer them.
Hiya. Should I just start talking? I guess so. So let me share my slide. Hi everyone. I'm Kristian Strommen. I am a climate scientist from the University of Oxford. Théo's made this very informative slide. So if you don't want to listen to me talk, you can always just take a screenshot of this and read it in your own time, or read it now while I talk. This project, so it's about somehow trying to make a bridge between topological data analysis and climate science via dynamical systems theory. So as a climate scientist, I think a lot about how climate change is going to affect northern hemispheric weather, and particularly maybe extreme weather. And when I say northern hemisphere, I'm often thinking particularly about North America or Europe. And the weather in these places is, to sort of good approximation, dominated by what the jet stream is doing. So the jet stream being this kind of band of winds, very strong winds in the atmosphere. Now, the jet stream is kind of, is a really complicated dynamical system, essentially. But it turns out kind of remarkably that it exhibits a certain amount of structure, which allows you to try to simplify the dynamics. And one way which has been done and studied a lot in climate science and in weather forecasting has been through something called weather regimes, which loosely speaking is a way of trying to break down the complex dynamics into a small number of manageable pieces, and then study the dynamics of those pieces through, for example, Markov chain dynamics. So one example of this is shown in this figure, this thing called the positive NAO and the negative NAO which are kind of showing these big pressure patterns. So the blue being, where it's blue, it's negative pressure, relatively speaking, and the red positive pressure. So you get this kind of dipole of pressure, which is kind of which would be one way of decomposing the North Atlantic climate and weather variability in a kind of very simple two-state system. Now, it turns out rather remarkably that there's good reason to think that in general, this kind of regime structure of the jet stream is topological in nature. So essentially, it should correspond to connected components and loops in a suitable sense in the phase space of the system. And the MRC is basically aimed at trying to realize that vision. There are several kind of challenges which arise when you try to implement this in practice, but challenges both on the kind of theoretical side. So, for example, the climate system is very noisy, so you have to understand things about statistical analysis of topological representatives. So, how do you do statistics with things like persistent homology? Then there's also kind of algorithmic and software challenges which arise, for example, due to the fact that the climate data is very large, so you need extremely efficient algorithms to kind of compute things sensibly and in a kind of good time. Those are kind of the goal of the MRC, is to kind of address some of these challenges head on and really try to make progress so that we can really begin applying things tools like persistent homology to climate data. So, I mean, the focus on this MRC is on this application towards weather regimes and the jet stream, but we really anticipate that there could be lots of different applications in all sorts of aspects of climate science. So the kind of broader goal of the MRC is to kind of really try to begin to build this kind of interdisciplinary research community, bridging topological data analysis, dynamical system theory, and climate science to enable people to really do this kind of exciting research in the intersection of all these things. We'll also have, you know, career development sessions and so on, and general community building stuff. There'll be tutorials provided on beforehand to kind of we're aware that most mathematicians won't have done any climate science before, and most climate scientists will never have done topological data analysis. So we'll kind of try to account for that in our tutorials in advance. And finally, yeah, in terms of what we're looking for in our applicants, we're basically just looking for anyone who has a background in algebraic topology, especially obviously computational sides, but also people more in climate and meteorology, who want to sort of get into the maths a bit more. And this includes both industry and academia. And to finish, I'll just point out that, yeah, we also had this AMS notice article published just recently. There's a link in the bottom right of the slide, which kind of gives some more detail about the stuff I was just talking about. So if you want to know a little more, then that'd be a place to start. Okay, thanks very much.
Great, thank you so much for that wonderful overview. Want to see if there's some questions from the room. Okay, we have a few. So, well, I'll answer what's here. Just a reminder about applications and eligibility. I've had a few questions come in about this. You are able to apply to more than one. I think you're allowed to apply to up to 2, but you will be asked to indicate which is your priority. You should not apply to more than 2 MRCs. And because the organizers select independently, you'll need to give a priority indication just in case you are accepted to more than 1. You can hear from the organizers that each group has several projects within it, and that there is this room, this opportunity for participants to be onboarded to the specifics of those projects and to even help shape them. It sounds like there's a range of numbers of projects in each of the groups. I've heard some have 5, some have fewer, some have more. And the organizers will determine, you know, ahead of the MRCs, how they're going to organize people into these research tracks within the MRC program. And we do have some timelines up about the MRC and when you should know about acceptance. So I can pull that data up here live. I'll ask my program specialist to get those numbers for me, but we can provide for you when you should hear back. The application closes in February. I'll invite, again, if there are any specific questions for this group, the climate science group is my shorthand. Otherwise, I'll invite all of the active panelists who are still in the backstage area to come on out, and we can just see if there are more questions incoming. Just hang out with the draft. Nice to see everyone. So we won't all be on site at the location in Beaver Hollow at the same time. It is the case so that we have, like, across the 4 groups, there are 3 weeks, so there are 2 that will be, you know, in Beaver Hollow at the same time. So a little bit of overlap there. But it is nice to see those folks working together, because as you can hear from the organizing teams, we really come from all around the world, and because we're providing a world-class MRCs. Very excited. I had several questions about participating in more than one MRC, or, you know, if you participated in the past, can you apply again? Again, this is a program that is funded by the NSF and the AMS, and our goal is to ensure that this funding, which provides travel support to the location, room and board while on site, follow-up travel support, and so on, that opportunity, that funding is available to as many early career researchers as possible. So the priority would be to those who have not participated before. If you feel like you still have a compelling reason, you are certainly allowed to submit an application and for that to be weighed by the organizers. Anything else? And we have a couple of particulars in the Q&A.
I can hop in and answer Daniel's question. We will definitely have sub-teams in the homotopical combinatorics. So I didn't talk much about the structural elements, but we're going to do some prep work before the on-site time. That'll be a chance to survey folks and figure out which types of problems they're interested in, and then actually form the teams before we end up meeting in Beaver Hollow. So that will be definitely part of the system, and the exact number will just depend on the participants and their interests.
So I guess the other question is for me. From when we applied for this MRC, there was not really any discussion of the optimization side of neural networks. So I know, at least for my end, any projects, because I just don't work on that part of neural networks, will not involve optimization, but it's possible that because it's such a fast, quickly changing area, that some of my co-organizers, when we meet together and say, okay, what are the 10 projects we want to give, because what we put in the proposal is like already outdated. But certainly more the understanding of neural networks is, I like to have a very broad view of saying that explainable AI is just general understanding of neural networks. Some people only want to define it as like heat maps and very specific things, but at least in the interpretation of us in the MRC, explainable AI is just more like, you have a neural network, let's use mathematics to understand why it's making certain decisions. But I can't say for sure that there will be any focus on optimization, because there wasn't that wasn't an intention when we first wrote the proposal.
Yeah, just for context, so that you know how long these organizers have been committed and are planning for your experience. The proposals for a given MRC are recruited about 2 years in advance, almost 2 years in advance. So your organizing team has been thinking deeply and is very excited to work with you. And there may be some changes along the way, but certainly in some fast-moving fields, there's also some ways that there's maybe been some changes. Don't see any additional questions at this point. Oh, as soon as you say that, a few more. Okay. How about the Algebraic Combinatorics group?
I cannot see the question, so
Okay, it's in the.
There's a click on the question on the more part.
I did, but it doesn't update. I cannot see any questions for the Algebraic Combinatorics group.
It's just in a general Q&A, and so what I'll read the question. It says, question for Algebraic Combinatorics MRCs: what sort of computing experience would be most useful? I heard Sage mentioned. Is Python and other coding experience valuable for contributing to the process?
Yeah, Sage is Python-based, basically understands almost every language. So if you write Python, Sage can read it. So, but it's appreciated, at least in my project. You know, kind of a lot of the discoveries that we made have been noticed by noticing patterns in data.
Yeah, I mean, same for my project. I don't think it's a heavily relied on any computer skill, but collecting some data would be helpful, but still it's more theoretical things. It's that saying just any background is welcome. I don't have any special requirement on computer skill. And Sheila's question, at least for our MRC, we do prepare about 10 projects. I think so. The 5 groups, you have 2 projects.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I was going to type something like that. That's pretty true. Not every single one of these 4 topics have 10 projects in the queue, but there's certainly more than one. Because as you heard or saw some of the quotes and you would see them online, one of the hallmark components of the MRCs is small group hands-on work. And so what the organizers do is help take something like a really big research project and help develop a research, almost like a research program in this area. So you're standing up all of these different groups who work very closely together, and then with mentoring from the organizers and others. So it's true that there are 4 groups. You heard the 4 topics today and saw at least one representative organizer from each, and in most cases more than one. The full roster of organizers and more description of those MRCs is available on our MRC page. And for all the participants today, we will make sure to send you a link to that page, a link to the notices articles that were referenced today for those folks who wrote notices articles, and any questions that were not answered live, or that we said we would follow up, we'll provide answers to those. But yes, so each of these 4 topics are expected to invite 40 early career researchers, and within those topics, you will hear several different project opportunities. And I think that's kind of covering the numbers stuff. So it is a lot.
I saw a new question from Jonathan want me to say more about Pamela Harris's project. Well, her background relates to Lie algebra, but I don't think in this particular project she mentioned having assumed any previous knowledge on representation of Lie algebra, but she does mention something about representation of symmetric groups.
And I heard from a variety of you that you've done work on these projects with folks ranging from undergraduates to graduate students, postdocs, sometimes non-academic, industry-related mathematicians. And that's amazing. So even though the MRCs, for our MRC audience that's listening, the MRC experience is targeted again through our NSF grant to those folks who are near the end of their PhD, so typically within 2 years or 5 years after. You're hearing from this that the kind of experience you're getting is one where you can share these problems, kind of almost immediately with some more early career researchers, and that these organizers are really mindful and understand multiple entry points to these problems and are prepared to get you all the way through and joining the program successfully. Okay. We have just 1 more minute left. I really appreciate the opportunity to see all of these organizers. It's really your energy and your enthusiasm and your hard work that leads up to a successful MRC. I hope that among the participants here today that we see applications from every single eligible person. If you are not eligible this year or you didn't hear something that's really aligning with your research area, keep an eye on the AMS web pages, because we have been offering MRCs since 2008, and we hope to continue to do so for a much longer time into the future. So really appreciate your energy and time today. I'll hang around. I know some of our participants had hard times that they had to leave, and I'll hang around and answer more questions. If we did not get to your question during the webinar, but you submitted it, we will be sure to post online. Also, this meeting was recorded, and the recording and the slides can be shared online. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. I do see a question here from a participant in the webinar related to international applicants. Because this is probably a question that we might get more broadly, I'm going to be sure to answer this online. So we do have limited space for international participants through our NSF funding. And so there are possibilities. There have historically been opportunities for self-funding, and I'll talk more about how you can contact us if that is something that you're considering as an international applicant. Again, there is room and space for international applicants in the MRCs, but if this is something you're considering, you can reach out to us. Okay, that's it. Bye from the AMS. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.